add that they've never had an accident while they've been flying the president. The last couple bullets there, I'd like to, it's pretty important for what I'm going to do in the next few slides. HMX-1 is unique in that it has 3 different chains of command, which is unheard of in the Marine Corps, or basically any other service either. The first one is WHAMO, White House Military Office. White House Military Office is located in the east wing of the White House. When I worked there for Reagan, my office was in the east wing of the White House. The director of the White House Military Office is usually a civilian presidential appointee, equivalent of 3-star. The White House Military Office directs HMX-1, whatever the presidential lift dictates. Where it is, where they have to go, what they have to do, the times they have to be there, and all that kind of stuff. The second part of the chain of command is the, we call them DCS Air, Deputy Chief of Staff for Aviation. And these folks direct HMX-1 to activities or missions that support the Marine Corps in general. And where I'm going with this is, remember me talking to you before about the Marine Corps Combat Development Command at Quantico? Well, those guys are developing policies, procedures, and all that kind of stuff. But we also have a bunch of Marines, active duty Marines at Quantico, that do training. When every Marine officer that goes through training goes through the basic school, which is 6 months at Quantico, they do exercises. They go to train to be a rifleman, a dirt Marine, before you go to flight school or anything, or to supply school or to artillery school. Every Marine officer goes through the basic school. And there's a lot of enlisted courses taught at Quantico also. Well, in support of these, a lot of times they go out and do field exercises. Those field exercises need helicopters to get them from point A to point B, to do things like fast roping and so forth. These helicopters, the DCS Air, the Deputy Chief of Staff for Aviation, Marine Corps, they are the ones that direct HMX-1 for that particular mission. And then you have the last mission, which is your OT&E, another very important mission. And those folks are directed out of Norfolk, Virginia. Now we get into 2 different areas of HMX-1. I'm going to spend a little bit more time on the white side since that's what gets the most visibility. And on the white side operations, you have we have 11 VH-3D aircraft. You have 8 60Ns, the White Hawks, and they do executive helicopter support and contingency support. And in the contingency support, I'd like to just go into a little bit of detail about that. I'll go into the executive helicopter transport in a minute. But the contingency support is another thing that most people don't know about. In my role down there as the Marine aide to the President, your main job is to support the President and the continuity of the government. As you probably know, the President is the only one that can launch nuclear weapons in this country. And if he cannot do that, or if he is incapacitated to do that without invoking Article 25 of the U.S. Constitution, this country could be in deep trouble. So the contingency support operations that HMX-1 provides is basically it's a get out of Dodge plan for the President. These aircraft are located at Anacostia at any given moment when the flag goes up and they are needed. Within 5 minutes, even if those pilots and crew are in they sleep in their flight suit, within 5 minutes they will be on the South Lawn. And in that, okay, where's they go from the South Lawn? Okay, one of my jobs down there was, aside from dressing up in my dress blues and shower shoes and looking pretty for ceremonies, you really planned out every place the President went. You had to have a contingency plan that we worked with the Secret Service with Air Force One and Marine One. So our job was to make that plan before the President moved anywhere. So when these aircraft take off from Anacostia and they go get the President on the South Lawn in an emergency, we're either going to do one of 2 things depending on the scenario. You will marry up or go directly over to the 89th Wing over to Andrews Air Force Base and get on Air Force One. Or if it's a really, really emergency and we have a nuclear problem or a terrorist threat, we have a pre-designated rendezvous place where the VH-1, the White Hawk, will rendezvous with NECAP. NECAP is a 747. There are only 4 of them in the United States, and NECAP stands for the National Emergency Airborne Command Post. Those aircraft rotate bases on a regular basis, so you never know where in the heck they are. And the point of it is that the Black Hawk from Anacostia picks up the president, gets him on NECAP. That aircraft can stay up and stay aloft for days at a time, and therefore we will not interrupt the continuity of the president. Our country will not be interrupted as far as any kind of response time that we have to have as far as a nuclear threat. So that's what we mean by contingency support. Yes?
Is that where President Bush was after 9/11?
I don't know that for sure. I know, I really don't know.
He was never on NECAP.
Okay.
He went from Florida, then he went to off to Louisiana, to Barksdale. Then they housed him at Offutt Air Force Base, Nebraska.
Okay, thank
So
you.
he came back to the White House.
Okay, thank you very much. Didn't know that. I'll put that in my next pitch. So that's what I mean by contingency support. It's really neat too. You know, the backbone of HMX-1, as in any squadron, are your enlisted personnel that are doing the maintenance, that are performing all of the tasks to keep those helicopters up and running. In HMX-1, they have a very unique system there as far as selecting people. You don't volunteer for HMX-1. They come and get you and ask you if you would like to be in HMX-1. All of the Marines there, both men and women, are canvassed from the Fleet Marine Force being Camp Lejeune or Camp Pendleton or wherever they may be. And you know, they get their records screened and all that kind of stuff, and they're a good, hardworking person, so forth and so on, and they are asked to be in Marine One. So if a person says yes, that's great, but then they have to go through a very, very rigorous background check. And the colonel and I were just talking about that at lunch, and he was in an organization that did these things and was telling me how long it took and so forth. I said, gee whiz, when I got mine, it took them about a month to do mine. That's very unusual, and it was only because of the billet that I was going to. Usually the SSBI, in the top secret clearance from the Navy, and the Yankee White clearance. Yankee White clearance is what it's called when you do have the clearance to work directly or in close proximity to the President of the United States. These normally take about 6 months at least to get done. So what happens is most of the well, they do. The HMX-1 folks that are working down there start out on the green side of the house while they're waiting for their clearance, and then they move to the white side of the house after they get their clearance. Very interesting. The HMX-1 is the only unit that takes all of their own security forces with them. If you've ever been to Quantico, you can drive onto Quantico, but if you go winding through Quantico Base and then go over to Marine Corps Air Station Quantico, it looks like Fort Knox. It's like they have guard dogs, barbed wire fences. They have signs right on the fences that say use of deadly force authorized. So it's a place where you don't want to go unless you're invited. Anyway, my whole point is, and wherever these aircraft go, they take their own security force with them. It's very, I won't say it's similar to, but the only other aircraft that I know right offhand that takes their own security forces with them is the C-5A Galaxy. They are considered a strategic asset, and when that Galaxy lands in whatever country it's going in, they go out, the Air Force personnel there, security people go out there and set up their own perimeter. Well, that's kind of just what the Marines do, except it's a little bit more intense. Overseas trips. When I mentioned earlier that the HMX-1's has a global responsibility to lift the president. And I mentioned the fact that these aircraft can be put in C-5s or C-17s and with no problem, and they'll be deployed to support the president. The president only flies in Marine One. And it is because, again, of connectivity. It has both the VH-60 and the H3 the VH-3 have a very, very sophisticated suite of communications, and they have everything from soup to nuts in there, I guarantee you. So the president, in order for continuity's sake, can talk to anybody, anytime, anywhere. And that's why Marine One flies him and only Marine One, or HMX One. If you're doing a global mission, I talked about the WHAMO before, White House Military Office, and one of the organizations in HMX One is called the WHELO, White House Liaison Officer. Now the Air Force One, the Air Force has that also, they have a liaison officer. So when we go on a trip, whether it's in the continental United States or outside the continental United States, we always have a WHELO with us and an Air Force One advanced guy. These, plus some Secret Service guys, the medical people. This forms your advanced team. And what these WHELOs, the WHELOs do is they will actually go out there, and if the president's going to, Chicago or something like that, they will actually go out there on the advanced team, say, okay, here's where we're going to land them. We know Air Force One's going to land here. We're going to get on Marine One here. We're going to lift them to the event and back. The WHELO, White House Liaison Officer from HMX One, is the one that coordinates this at the site. He literally is taking dimensions of the LZ and where the helicopter is going to land. Everything is coordinated down to the Gnat's rear end. It is very, very, a very, very detailed plan, very detailed. So those folks, the WHELOs, are very important part of HMX One, and again, they work closely with the White House Military Office. The next one down here, the Anacostia, the facility, I just mentioned that. I think I went over it a little bit earlier and explained that whole thing to you, and as well as the single integrated operations plan. If you were in a billet serving the President of the United States, no matter what branch of the service you were in, and you do it for at least a year and you don't fall on your sword, you get what you call a Presidential Service Badge. And it looks kind of like this lapel pin right here. And this is what a real one looks like. It's about this big. It's gold on the back. It weighs about a pound. They're all numbered. Mine here is 8056. So when these things first started back in the 70s, I have the 8056 one right here. If you'd like to see it during a break or something like that, more than willing to pass it around. This is called a PSB, Presidential Service Badge, and all the guys at HMX that are on the white side get that. And commonly in the Marine Corps and HMX, we refer to it as the cookie. Green side operations, they have the, as we mentioned before, they have the CH-46 and the CH-53. And we have to, of course, thank the Sikorskis for the 53 and the Piasekis for the 46. Primarily when my real job, other than the White House thing, when my real job in the Marine Corps was flying the CH-46. And I can tell you it's a great aircraft, hauls a lot of people and a lot of cargo. And that is a picture of the CH-46 right there. As far as the last part of this, the green side operations, they do have, in addition to the 46s and 53s and H3s and so forth, they do have one UH-1N, but that again, that aircraft is a test bed for hanging boxes on and going out and doing testing on it. So it's, although it's part of HMX-1, it's not really part of HMX-1. And as I mentioned before, the green side is where most of the HMX-1 folks go while they're waiting their security. And lastly, I just wanted to mention the Marine Corps Combat Development Command. I did mention that before, but they are a very, very important part of the not only HMX but the Marine Corps, because they develop the tactics, they do like the improvements, the innovations, they come up with doctrine. You know, gee whiz, back in World War II, we were landing on boats, and now in Desert Storm, we're landing in helicopters and using all this. So it's just like our innovators and our creators of rotorcraft, you know, they're always striving to improve things and making it better. And that's what MCDC does. And I think I kind of already went over this as far as the fast roping and operational test and evaluation. They do a lot of work testing the Osprey. Right now, the Air Force has one down at Hurlburt Field, which we hang a lot of stuff on and do a lot of testing down there also. But the Marine Corps does testing on the MV-22 Osprey, and the Air Force variant is called the CV-22 Osprey. Oh my gosh, now I have to show a video.
It takes every individual here to get that airplane in the air to fly the President of the United States.
Everything that you do is going to impact what's going to happen to the Commander-in-Chief, which potentially could affect the rest of the world.
We want to ensure that the President gets from point A to B safely.
Diagonal 4 wind 030 at 12.
The first time or the 300th time that you go on short final to the South Lawn with the boss on board, it's pretty intimidating.
Perfect. Come straight down. Good lineup. 4, 3, 2, 1. Brakes, brakes, brakes.
Our Marine Ones are obviously the best of the best. They live and they breathe to maintain that aircraft.
We maintain that level 3 restricted area integrity everywhere we go.
It can be folded up and put on board a C-17 very quickly and be able to go anywhere in the world almost on a monthly basis.
Marine pilots are different in that we fight differently. We fight together, that's the way we train. So we're close air support. Everything that you see in the Marine Corps, the focus of effort is always that infantryman on the ground.
You never get tired of flying around D.C. at 200 feet, seeing the people down there waving to you.
If you look left and you look right and you see your squadron members, it's a pride. You're very proud to be where you are.
We made a difference.
And I, from a small town, never thought I'd be in a situation where I'm part of living history.
The pride, the professionalism, devotion to do it right and do it right 100% of the time, it's a common denominator.
This is not a squadron full of special Marines doing an average mission. We're just average Marines doing a very special mission, and I think we approach it from that direction.
I'd just like to mention one thing in closing. This year, as you know, the Marine, well, you know, we have, in the Marine Corps, we have both men and women. Big surprise. But this year, HMX-1 had Major Jennifer Graves, had the first all-female crew from HMX-1 and landed on the South Lawn and picked up the President. It's the first time in Marine Corps history, first time in HMX-1 history that they've had an all-female crew land on the South Lawn and pick up the President. And matter of fact, we tried to get her to come up here to do this thing, and after she made this lift, which was probably back in April or May, she was getting orders to go to Command and Staff College. Again, it's one of those schools right at Quantico. So when I contacted her, she very nicely declined, because when you're in that school down there for the year, you got to stick to the school, and they're not going to let you escape. But anyway, I just thought that would be it's a neat point of interest, first time in HMX-1 and Marine Corps history. And I have 1.5 minutes. Would anybody like to ask a question?
How long do the Marines serve on the white side?
An average tour is probably, and I'm saying this, it's probably a minimum of 4 years. A lot of times HMX-1, and I know this just because back when I worked down there, the two COs, commanding officers, first one was Terry Dake and the next one was Dick Peasley. Both of those gentlemen I became pretty good friends with, and they would tell me that, well, you know, we try to keep them here for 4 years, But due to the fact that it takes so long for security clearances to get these people trained up and so forth, sometimes they'll stay there a lot longer. I mean, several years, which is very unusual for the Marine Corps for a career pattern. But you know, if HMX is not really a bad place to be. You know, they get good things. Yes, sir.
What was President Reagan like?
I've had a lot of people ask me that. And my best answer to that is, if you ever saw him on TV or you saw him talking with people, he was just like that in real life. He was a consummate gentleman, treated everybody the same. I will never forget when we were doing the economic summit over in Venice, Italy in 1987. We were on one of the islands out there, and we had the boat to all of our meetings and stuff. And when the president goes somewhere like that, there's not enough Secret Service people to do everything. So what they do is they will, for security, they will get the Marines from the Marine Security Guard Detachment. These are the Marines that go to embassies, our embassies all over the world, and they provide security. And these guys are standing in their suits in the hotel. We're walking out of the room and so forth. And he went down there and shook everyone's hand. Some of these guys are like lance corporals and corporals and stuff. He said, thank you for taking time away from your family to be here. You know, that's just the kind of guy he was. When we would be up at Camp David or the ranch, he would always he would come up at the ranch. There was only the Secret Service, the military aide, and the doctor. And the doc and I would have our own little trailer, and the Secret Service had theirs. And after we get done riding horses in the morning, he'd come up to our trailer, and we'd have me, the doc, the Secret Service guy, and the president. We'd all have a soda, and he'd tell us stories about his Hollywood days. I mean, he was a genuine person. Yeah, he just an outstanding guy.
He used to ride horses a lot at the stable. So you would fly him from the South Lawn back to Quantico, and then he would come around to the stables that way, or?
No, when I said horses, that would be out at the ranch in Santa Barbara.
But I heard he rode a lot at the stables at Quantico.
Yeah, he did that. He only did that maybe once or twice. Normally we would ride up at Camp David. He would ride up at Camp David. So anyway, appreciate being here, and thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Pete. Great show. Absolutely wonderful. Our next speaker, Sam Evans, is a retired colonel in the Army. Sam is also a member of our family here at the museum. And when I asked Sam if he would put this talk together, his response was that he didn't know whether he would be able to find enough material, but that he would try. I'll leave it to you to figure out whether he succeeded. Sam is affiliated now, having retired from the military, as a research associate at the Vertical Lift Research Center of Excellence at Penn State University. And we owe him a tremendous debt of gratitude because he came down last night from Penn State, and after this talk, he's headed back to Happy Valley for obvious reasons. Fortunately, we know that he's going to make it on time. It is Penn State. And today, the sky is blue. Sam. Just hit play.
Thank you, Lawrence. And I must say that I am triply honored to be here today because, one, you're all high school teachers. And if I were to tell my high school teachers that I had back in the early 80s, was it early? No, I guess late 70s. If I were to tell them that I'd be up here talking to teachers, they'd laugh. Secondly, I'm honored because when Lawrence asked me if I could do this, you know, first they came and said, "Hey Sam, do you know General Dick Cody? You know, former Vice Chief of Staff of the Army. He retired from the Army about the same time I did. He was at the Pentagon. I was on his staff there. I was one of 1,000 colonels he might see every day. So we weren't good friends, but I had been in his office several times and he had yelled at me, so we had some connections. So I said, well, you know, we could ask him, and he might, you know, I'm sure he'd love to do this, but knowing that he's recently retired and, you know, I'm sure he's working some other job, you know, a week out, he might have to cancel because something else might pop up. So, you know, it might not be a good idea to get him because you can't really count on him to be here. And they said, well, do you know anybody else who knows anything about Army aviation? And I said, nope, no one else. And Lawrence, you know, and Bob Beggs gave me that look, you know, all right, you know, okay, I'll do it. But I'm triply honored because after sitting this morning, you know, Lawrence, I ran into him right before lunch. He said, what do you think? And I said, well, I was going to be putting my presentation together this morning. I'm putting the final touches on it while I sat in the audience because I figured it was going to be kind of boring and, you know. I was just astounded at what I learned this morning. I couldn't stop listening. And to be able to speak on the same agenda, and you know, Lawrence sent out the final agenda yesterday, which is the first time I looked at it. And I looked at it and I said, okay, Dr. Charnoff, you know, former aide to the president, Pulitzer Prize winner, Igor Sikorsky Jr., Fred Piasecki, and Sam. Who would have thought that I'd be speaking on the same agenda as all those folks? So I'm honored that I was even asked. Hopefully, and as you can tell, there's grave concern because I pieced together a short video and 285 slides. I was given an hour, which is longer than most of the speakers. I would have taken some time away from me and given some more to some other folks, but that's just the way the agenda came out yesterday. But now I'm down to 25 minutes. And I'm still going to do those 285 slides. And I'm still going to do my video, and I'm not going to tell as many war stories, but we're going to get through this in about 25. I might take an extra 5 minutes. Okay, I can have 10. But it truly is an honor to be here, and I thank you for what you do every day. I'm sure Pete will tell you, if those of us that have been in the military since 9/11, out there in the street, when folks see you, they tend to thank you a lot more, which is greatly appreciated. But all you teachers out there in a profession, it's the same way. You do some dirty duty every day. You work some long, hard hours for not great pay, and you deserve the same thanks that we've been getting more regularly. So appreciate what you do. Okay, let me get on with this show here. When I was given this opportunity to speak here today, I said, well, this can't be hard. History of Army Aviation. We have the Army Aviation Museum at Fort Rucker, Alabama. You heard that the Marines do their training at Pensacola. In the Army, we like to go to what we call L.A., Lower Alabama. And I heard someone speak this morning and said something about helicopters are good for scaring chickens. In Lower Alabama, that's a lot of what you do. But our flight school down there, we have a museum, nice, fairly new, well, probably 10 years old now, but new since I was down there in flight school. Nice museum, lots of great exhibits. They have a curator, they have a historian. So I thought, I'll call the historian and say, send me your canned Army Aviation slideshow so I can give it today. And then I waited a month, no response. Then I waited, I called again and waited another month, no response. And I started getting a little antsy about 3 weeks out and was like, come on, you guys got to have something. Finally got a hold of the historian. He's like, and you got to understand Lower Alabama, the Army likes to get things done. Lower Alabama, they don't like to get things done as fast. And this guy's been there a while apparently, and well, he hadn't come across the thought that as an Army aviation historian, he should probably have some history on Army aviation and have it compiled as in the form of a slideshow of some sort. So I'm going to send this to him when I'm done. And hopefully other old Army aviators can use it in the future. But what he sent me was all these pictures on a CD. Okay, so, and to me, every helicopter is beautiful. I culled about 5 out of the collection, and you get to see the other 285. And again, and what he also gave me was a script. And I'd love to get up here and just talk about the history, but I don't know that much. So I'm going to read what is to him a movie script that they're working on that's not quite complete, and I've tried to piece together the helicopters that fit into the movie script. So this is more like a 285 slide movie. Okay, so here we go. Army Aviation wings, when our branch insignia, when you're in Army Aviation, that's the insignia. Well, no, not with ACU now, we don't wear branch insignia. Never mind. On our formal uniforms, you'll see that to signify that you're an Army Aviation branch, which just became a branch in the Army in 1984. There's the wings you get after you complete flight school. And those were a qualification from history gone by when they use it as a marksman badge now, but no longer used. Okay, so now I'm going to begin with the script. And again, this is it lays out a pretty good history. And again, I apologize for having to read. And I will stop occasionally if there are some points I'd like to highlight. But I have 15 minutes and 280 slides to go. Okay, the faces of Army Aviation today are the faces of young men, American men and women at the controls of powerful, sophisticated technology, bringing a decisive combat edge to the fight. The Army has a history of continuously redefining itself. The singular proud ethic of Army Aviation, however, has always been and always will be to support the soldiers on the ground. And as you heard Pete say the same thing for the Marines, we exist to support the infantry soldier. The concept of using Army Aviation in support of soldiers in combat began inauspiciously for the Army during the Civil War. Tethered hot air balloons carried Army observers aloft to direct artillery fire and scout troop movements. This